the once magical, mighty Magyars of Hungary. Legendary side from the 1930s into the 1950s. One of the best footballing countries to have never won the World Cup, along the likes of Czechoslovakia and the Netherlands. World Cup runners-up in 1938 and 1954. This is a footballing nation that has been so grotesquely and so finitely on the decline in the last 4 or 5 decades that they have sort of faded into obscurity and at the mid-card level becoming a third slash fourth tier side in Europe for the large part of the 1960s, the 70s, the 90s, and the 2000s, and the 2010s. Hungary did return to the World Cup in 1982, where they registered the single largest victory in a single World Cup match, a 10-1 victory over El Salvador. But after that, they fell back into the wilderness and sort of disappeared off the radar for a long time. For many decades after their 1954 come from behind loss in the World Cup final to West Germany, Hungary sort of became one of the weakest sides in Eastern European football for a while. And it's really unfortunate because I feel like Hungary serves as sort of a I don't want to use the words cautionary tale because those are the words I would use to describe the Czech Republic golden generation from the early 2000s, which I will make a separate video on sometime later this month. But there's sort of like an old folklore legend when you open up an old book about, the old stories you heard from when you were a kid kind of thing. They are one of many fallen giants of global football, and it is unfortunate because they've fallen so hard that they had not even remained relevant after the 1954 World Cup, led by legendary striker Ferenc Puskás, arguably one of the greatest footballers of all time. 1930s into the 1950s, Hungary at the domestic level had some of the best clubs in the world, the best football management in the world, the best facilities in the world. And they were honestly one of the forefathers of the sport, one of the very early powerhouses of the game. They were a powerhouse in football before Brazil emerged on the scene in 1958. A handful of countries, Uruguay, Italy, Hungary, Sweden, Brazil also, they made the 1950 World Cup, but all those countries I just named were sort of the early contestants to win a World Cup. Austria as well, forgot. And Hungary, looking at where they are today in relative position to 50, 60 years ago, that's quite a long time in world football. And they've never been quite the same since. One had thought, many in the media, the players, the fans of Hungarian football, believed that a return to the Euro 2016 tournament last summer in France would have marked a new era, a new chapter in Hungarian football that could have potentially opened the door to a revival or a renaissance period, similar to what Uruguay went through in 2010 and what Uruguay is still going through now. But that was proved to be short-lived as they are pretty much all but eliminated from 2018 World Cup qualifying. They are not officially out, but they're pretty much done. In a group with Faroe Islands, Latvia, and Andorra, one would have thought they would have made a strong case to finish in the top two spots, but they are well behind on points to Portugal and Switzerland. And to cap it all off, the piece de la resistance, the hallmark of their decline, came in a humiliating defeat in World Cup qualifying a few months ago against minnows of Europe, Andorra. Andorra one of the lowest ranked sides in Europe and indeed the world, though I'm sure their ranking has gone up since defeating Hungary. This was an embarrassment. This was a humiliating defeat. It was a 1-0 loss on the road to Andorra, the tiny landlocked nation in between France and Spain in the Pyrenees Mountains. And it really, really symbolized how far, how hard this once giant, this once megalith of world football had fallen and has fallen. Euro 2016, in my opinion, and I don't want to sound harsh, I don't want to sound rude, I don't want to sound mean, but I think Euro 2016 was mostly a combination of a good run in form and luck. Because you break down Hungary's progress in the Euro 2016 tournament match by match. They came up against an Austrian team that was supposed to be one of, if not the main dark horses heading into the tournament, who had just completely failed, fell apart under terrible management. Hungary won that game 2-0. Then they played against European champions Portugal, eventual champions, but who had not really shown up in that tournament until the knockout stages started. That game between Hungary and Portugal was a high-scoring affair, but only because Portugal entered that match with 2 points, and they needed some kind of result in that last game. Otherwise, they would have been eliminated, and they would not have gone on to win the trophy eventually. So both teams abandoned all sense of defense. It was a very open affair, and that match ended 3-3. Arguably, their toughest game in that group was with Iceland. Group F overall, I think, was one of the more weaker groups of the Euro 2016 tournaments. And then once they got to the next round, in round of 16, I knew they weren't not going to get past Belgium. Everyone's saying, wow, Hungary, surprise Group F winners. They can go on, make a deep run in this tournament, maybe to the semis. Belgium thrashed them 4-0. And they crashed out. And then they carried that form on to Euro 2016. Reality came crashing down on them, and they lost, like I said, to Andorra, a historic victory for the tiny nation, and a historic defeat for Hungarian football. And it's really sad, because you kind of have to wonder what might have been for that generation. They had gotten to the 1954 World Cup final, had taken a 2-0 lead over Germany in the first 15 minutes. Germany coming from behind to win that final 3-2 in what has been called Das Wunder von Bern, the miracle or the wonder of Bern. Germany's first ever World Cup title. It was a come-from-behind victory for the Germans, and Hungary, that opportunity for gold slipped away, and it didn't just slip away for that year. Turns out it slipped away possibly permanently. Well, it is unfortunate. Maybe Hungary will find itself back at the pinnacle of world football one day, but I wouldn't count on it happening anytime soon. Thanks for watching my video. Leave a comment below, like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Until then, have a good night. Much love. As always, peace out.